Welcome to Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. Join Toby Malone and TJ Young, along with some special friends, as we puzzle our way through what we once thought was an unreadable book to produce a surprisingly listenable podcast. It is Friday, June 28th, 2024. It has been 43 days since we have started reading, with 125 pages complete of 628, meaning we have 503 pages left to go, and are 19.9% of the way through Finnegans Wake. Welcome to episode 11 of Wake, the podcast which is asking the questions, phrasing answers as questions, and questioning all those answers, all in the name of fulfilling a long-held bucket list item, reading James Joyce's Finnegans Wake out loud just once. I'm your host, Toby Malone, joined as always by my friend with the greatest possible potential of winning a Tony Award, the man who's fresh off a book signing and teaching workshops triumphantly, TJ Young. Hi, TJ.
Oh, hello. Thank you for that. I also want to throw in the mix that while I'm in Bloomington, Indiana at the International Thespians Festival, it's been a great week. I have walked a minimum of 14,000 steps every day since I got here. And every time I sit down, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be that person who falls asleep in any chair. I just know it now. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm excited to do this, and I'm also excited to go home tomorrow. So,
well, I'm glad that you are bringing that energy to the podcast as well. So, both the excitement of the festival, but also the weariness that engenders.
I was like, you might get a tap out from me, not from lack of trying, but from just like, bro, I'm tired.
That's all right. And also joining us is another one of TJ's and my favorite people in the world, director, educator, theater owner, world changer. We have Aili Huber in the house. Welcome, Aili.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
We are so thrilled that you're here. It's amazing that you are. Aili and TJ and I first met when we were all on regional leadership with the Kennedy Center American College Theatre Festival, and we were planning this major theatre festival in students in New Jersey for students across 8 American states. And the first time we met, Aili and I got into an argument where we disagreed. Right, Aili? Do you want to tell the story?
Yes, we had a big fight. Well, I started it because I was bored. I knew you were going to fight me. I was working on a cut of Richard III, and I slid over to Toby, and I said, hey, what do you think if I just cut everything that happens at Pomfret? And your response was sort of like delightfully outraged. And so we had this whole like back and forth about whether that would eliminate important context from the play. And I would just like to also note that this is a production for high school students who don't care about Pomfret or the politics at all. Like, just give me more stabbing, thank you, and witches. And anyway, at some point, our argument sort of lulled, and we realized that everyone in the room was staring at us. And then, as I recall, someone, I forget even who it was, it might have been Heidi Vogel, said, you guys should definitely do a workshop about that.
Right.
And that the rest is history. And then, then we ended up writing a book about it.
That's right. Yeah. On this podcast, we always talk in hushed tones about the purists, about how we're almost certainly upsetting the purists who care very deeply about this book that we're butchering. But in that conversation, I was definitely the purist. I had my purist hat on of going, you can't cut something like that from Shakespeare. But like you say, we taught a workshop on it, and then as you do, we ended up publishing it as a book with Routledge, which,
as it happens,
so no big deal. But Aili and I wrote a book called Cutting Plays for Performance: A Practical and Accessible Guide, which came out a couple of years ago with Routledge. You should all buy a copy for your school library because it is an indispensable text.
It is very good. I send it to, I had a student who was cutting Hamlet, and I was all like, here you go. Take this book. I have a copy for school and I have a copy for home. And I want to say one of my favorite things about the two of y'all is that, and I mean this with all the love of my heart, y'all care so much more about like the intention of Shakespeare than I do. But I could be like, what about this thing? And then you dump on me and I'm like, cool, thank you so much. But I'm like, I have friends who are smarter than me and they allow me to do the thing and they will tell me if I'm stepping over the line.
Yeah, and sometimes you need that. Like a couple of weeks ago, we had Neil Wexler, amazing playwright, in on the podcast, and he showed us exactly what it is to care deeply about Finnegans Wake, and it was a really interesting conversation. So, I mean, in terms of Finnegans Wake being that giant behemoth, I don't know whether or not any of the principles that we come up with in cutting plays would be useful for Joyce. Maybe making a few cuts here and there. I don't know if any of our rules would apply, but we will see.
We'd have to know what he's saying first before we can cut it.
Right. I was
Right.
gonna say our first question is what story are you trying to tell?
That's
And
right.
like, um, I'm not. I'm a little vague on whether that is a concern in Finnegans Wake at
Well,
all.
if you ask most of the purists, they would say yes, there is a story being told, and that every syllable has meaning,
Mm.
but not in the language you think. So that's always fun. So in terms of Joyce, Aili, do you have any kind of relationship with Joyce and Finnegan's Wake?
Not not much. So I did a double major in undergrad, English and theater, and in my English major, I had to read. I think I only ever read The Dubliners, which I
Hmm.
actually really liked. I don't remember much about it, but I do remember actually really enjoying that. And then I haven't read Ulysses. I've never read Finnegans Wake before, and I feel like I don't know. I have some issues with something where I feel like the purpose is to be inaccessible. Like the fact that I like the Dubliners is probably like a demerit with Joyce people. Uh, you know?
Maybe. I mean, it is certainly the most accessible of his
Yeah.
major works, but yeah, the intentional obtuseness can sometimes be a little bit grating. But I think his belief was that the English language didn't serve his purposes anymore. He had to expand beyond it to express the things that were inside of him. And he was going blind at this point, and
Mm.
there was all sorts of stuff going on. So
Do you think that the inclination to be pushed away from things that are purposefully inaccessible, do you think that comes from your training as a director, or like being steeped in theater? Because we're always going for clarity. Well, not always,
Mm.
but usually we're going for
Some of
clarity.
us. I think actually it's like yes and to be all theatery about it. I think it's about the fact that people who create things for the purpose of being inaccessible, um, it often just kind of bleeds over into pretension a little bit,
Mm.
you know? And it's like, well, if you were smarter, you would understand this, which of course is also a thing that Shakespeare people totally do. But Shakespeare himself was, I think, like writing for the purpose of accessibility. Um, for the people of his time, and it's just like 400 years makes that a little bit less
mhm.
clear. So yeah, I think it's actually about like, oh, you think you're very very special and fancy because you write this thing that's impenetrable. um but I will say I was listening to your last episode trying to like make sure I knew who the major characters were and like what the plot points are leading up to this moment, which that didn't happen. um but I had this experience actually that reminded me of listening to people read E. Cummings aloud, and I love E. Cummings so much. There is this thing about using language in a way that paints a picture in a way that bends the words out of what they're supposed to be, right? Like one of my favorite E. Cummings poems is called "My Father Moved Through Dooms of Love," and the first lines are, "My father moved through dooms of love, through sames of have, through halves of give, lifting the something of the moon. My father moved through depths of joy."
Hmm.
Right? And so it's like, what does any of that mean? What is through halves of give? And not halves with an L, like have, having, giving.
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, I kind of I think if I just looked at it on the page, I might feel the obtuseness of it more. And listening to it, I kind of got the impressionistic value of it, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I feel as though having that intermediary reader, meaning, I mean, and to tap into your experience as a director, it's really interesting because something that's on a page which can maybe look obtuse, that's going to be filtered through an actor so that an audience can interpret it. I mean, that's a big part of your role, right? I mean,
Oh,
particularly
totally.
if you're doing a text that the actor is struggling to understand and having to work with them to find that meaning so that they can portray that meaning. Because we used to always say to young actors doing Shakespeare, if you don't understand it, the audience has got no hope.
Yeah, completely.
So yeah, it's interesting. I'm very interested to So it's good to hear that you've listened to a little bit of the podcast.
I tried.
I know.
It goes back to, if the actor doesn't understand it, the audience has no hope.
It is true, yeah. Although I do find that because I listen back each week to make sure that it's all clean, and I'll often find that I pick up new things as a listener, even if I'm listening to myself or TJ's read. I'm hearing things that I don't remember saying, or I didn't have no memory of getting any comprehension of then, but is clearer to me as a listener. So I feel as though it rewards repetition as well.
Speaking of, can I ask you a question about that last episode? This was one that had Natalie in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. Okay. Today, so we're recording this the day after the first presidential debate.
Right.
So Heather Cox Richardson, who's a historian who writes some really interesting political work, her email late last night went out that she does every day, and it talks about a debate tactic called the gish gallop, which is like when you just spew lies so fast that your opponent can't rebut them. And something about that chimed in my ear, and I think so. She cited this source from like 1994, but Toby, I think I heard you say something about the galloping gish in that episode,
right.
And it just like it chimed in my ear. I didn't go back and look, but I was like, did that actually come from James Joyce?
Oh, wouldn't
so
that
anyway,
be interesting?
Does that ring a bell for anyone? I've been thinking about this all morning.
I'm gonna tell you the truth. These words come in, they pass out, they don't stop, they do not collect $200, except for a couple lines, which I'm still saying, as I forget the line. Oh, it was life, but was it fair? It was free. It was art, but was it free? Oh, it was free, but was it art? And I was like, that's such a good line. I told Toby that's my tattoo. That's my Finnegans Wake tattoo.
So we just took a quick break to check that reference that Aili brought up, because we were all very interested to know. We found the reference to the word gish, and gish, how they gushed away the penny fares, a whole school for scamper with their sashes flying shish behind them, all the pearly pets. So it could have been that reference. I'm not sure.
I think that's probably right.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So unfortunately, maybe not a Joycean reference, but
I like
a
galloping gish.
But I do like the Joycean echo that have come up in this political discourse. So probably the only positive thing to come out of the presidential debate last night.
I mean, at this point, they are reminding me of Joyce at the end of him writing this novel, losing their mind, probably not sleeping,
Right. Well, and it's an interesting thing, that whole idea of telling so many lies in this cascade to the point where you can't keep up anymore feels a lot like a lot of this content, where you're not going from point of clarity to point of clarity. You're going through the darkness to every now and then identify something that stands out, and really the only way to really penetrate it is to study it and live in it, which is obviously very difficult. So it's going to be interesting, our reading today. We're reading a chapter which is called The Quiz, and we were reading content which covers the first 10 quiz questions that Joyce asks in his chapter, which is a quiz on all sorts of things about legendary and geographical elements that that will be pertinent later in the book. So a lot of interesting things. I don't know if quizzes are your thing. TJ, I know you like a pub quiz.
Oh, yeah, trivia. I'm a trivia fan. And also Cranium, that game in high school, unstoppable. Right. Never lost a game in high school.
So what is your area of expertise in a trivia? Like when the question comes up, what question do they look to you for?
If it's anything to do with animation, video games, or a lot of music as well, I'm like, I'm there for you. If it's like deep cut movies, I'm like, nope. But we actually got a question about kids movies. It was like, name all the Air Bud, like what sports have Air Bud played? And I'm like, I'm trained for this.
My whole life is leading to this moment. What about you, Aili? Are you a trivia person?
So in college, I was the reigning champion at You Don't Know Jack in my very small college in Ohio.
You Don't Know Jack. I love that.
And You Don't Know Jack is actually like my perfect kind of trivia because it's not only like weird stuff you might know, but it also really depends on like puns and wordplay and kind of being able to like build backward from the question. I do sometimes like a bar trivia kind of thing, although the overlap between the kinds of questions that often come up in my areas of expertise is very small. So, if it's a hockey question, the answer I have is Wayne Gretzky every single day.
Every time.
Um,
Me too.
Every time. Do I know of any other hockey players? I assume there are other people who also play that sport. Um, so, I'm like actually not super great at bar trivia, but I am a lot of fun and I can come up with an amusing answer, if not always the right answer.
And in this quiz that Jason Joyce is going to give us, maybe coming up with the wrong answer is actually the thing he's looking for most. So we'll find out. So as always, we're reading from the Penguin Modern Classics edition of Finnegans Wake, published in 2000, with a foreword by Seamus Dean. So today we're reading the first half of chapter 1-6 from pages 126 to 148 in this edition. And as I've said, this is a segment titled The Quiz by the Oxford World's Classic edition of 2012, which also includes brief summaries of what's happening in each subsection, which we will address at the end of each reading. As always, we do have the tap out option for all of us. TJ's already indicated that maybe you'll be doing some tapping out today. Aili, if you ever need to tap out for any reason, whether it be natural disaster or brain freeze or family interruption or whatever it be, just give us the timeout sign and we will take over. There is no shame in tapping out. Because this is a whole extra experience. I'm looking forward to seeing what you think once we get to the end of it all. And now, without further ado, Finnegans Wake.
So, who do you know tonight, ladies and gentlemen? The echo is where in the back of the woads. Call him forth. Sean MacIrwick, brief dagger for the concern of Messrs. John Jamieson and Song, rated 100 and thin per store hundred on this nightly quisquiquack of the 12 apostrophes, set by Jocket McIrwick. He misunderstood and aim for am allo of number 3 of them, and left his free natural riposts to 4 of them in their own fine artful disorder. 1. What second to none mither rector and maximost bridges maker was the first to rise taller through his beanstale than the bubblegum Buaboa Bababown or the giganteous Wellingtonia sequoia went nudie boots with trouters into a Lafayette when she was barely in her tricklies, was well known to cloud a conciliation cap onto the esker of his hooth, sports a chain-ganger's Albert solemnly over his Hoolander's epaulettes, thought he weighed a Newton when there felled his first lap-apple, gave the heinousness of choice to every night betwixt yesterdicks and two marys, had 7 all successive-coloured saraband maids on the same big white drawing-room hearthrug, is a Wilberforce to this hour at house as he was in Heather, pumped the Catholic war tree and shocked the Protestant Boyne, killed his own hungry self in anger as a young man, found fodder for 5 when Alamark and Rose go fluted, with Irish tutors Cornish made easy. Voucher of rotables, toll of the road, bred many-headed stepsons for one leap your own daughter, is too funny for a fish and has too much outside for an insect. Liked a heptagon, crystal, and prisms, trues and false for us, is infinite swell in unfitting induments. Once was he shovelled, and once was he arsoned, and once was he inundered, and she hung him out Bill Bailey, as has a quadrant on in his tile to tell Toller, cataclog it is, offers chances to long on, but stands up to leg before, found coal at the end of his harrow and moss roses behind the seams, made a fort out of his postern and wrote FERT on his buckler, is escape master in chief from all sorts of hounding places. If he out Herods against Barkers, to the shulbred he acts whitely, was evacuated at the mere appearance of 3 Gurmhuns and twice besieged by a sweep. From zoomorphology to omni-animalism, he is brooched by the spin of a coin. Towers, an Eddystone amid the lampless, casting swan beams on the deep, threatens thunder upon malefactors and sends whispers up Frau-Frau's frou-frous. When Duke Hookback Crook upsits his ass Boosworthy's jeer and junket, but they booze him oohs and bahs his ahs when he looks like Hunket Plunket. By Susanos and search a party on a lady of this city, Business, reading newspaper, smoking cigar, arranging tumblers on table, eating meals, pleasure, etc., etc., pleasure, eating meals, arranging tumblers on a table, smoking cigar, reading newspaper, business. Minerals, wash and brush up, local views, juju toffee, comic and birthdays cards. Those were the days, and he was their hero. Pink sunset shower, red clay cloud, sorrow of Sahara, oxhide on Iran, arraigned and attained, listed and lighted, pleaded and proved, catches his check at Bank of Ingadangd, and endures his doom at chapel exit. Brain of the Franks, hand of the Christian, tongue of the North, commands to dinner and calls the bluff, has a block at Morgan's and a headache all the afternoon. Plays Gehammerat when he's Ernst, but misses Mozzie when he's lustig. Walked as far as the head where he sat in state as the rump. Shows early English trace marks and a marigold window with manigild lights. A myrioscope, 2 remarkable pispines, and 3 well worth seeing ambries. Arches all portcullis, and his knave dates from dots. Is a horologe unstoppable, and the ben of all bells. Fuit, east, and Herod, and though he's mildew stained, he's mouldy stoned. Is a Quericus in the forest, but a plain member for Megalopolis. Mountain mighty, fawn on Fleetfoot, plank in our platform, blank in our scotorn. Hidal, in Karukut he is enumerated, holds as an earl he counts. Ship-shaped phrase of bug-looking words, with a form like the easing moments of a graminivorous. To our dooms brought he law, our manoirs he made his vil of, was an overgrind to the underground, an aqueduced for fiery throats, sends boys in socks a kugwa hot whooping when he sets forth his carbon oxide, and silk stockings show her shapings when he loses hose on hers, stocks dry powder for the ill people, and pinkins pellets for all the pale.
Gave his Monday foot to Misarius, her pinch to Anna Livia, that superfine pigtail to Ceresia Sorosia, and quid rides to Titius, Caius, and Sempronius, made the man who had no notion of shopkeepers feel he'd rather play the duke than play the gentleman, shot 2 queens and shook 3 castles when he won his game of dwarfs, fumes inwards like a strombolus till he smokes at both ends, man-mote, the fire of him, womankind, Pitad shows 1 white drift of snow among the gorse growth of his crown, and the chaperon of repentance on that which shed gore, paws and quees, triple bill, went by metro for the polis, and then hoved by. To the finders, hail, woe, you that seek! Whom filth had plenished, death devoured, Hock is leading, Coco comes next, Emery tries for the flag, can dance for the O'Bruins polar pass at Nulahan to his own orchestrous accompaniment, took place before the International Convention of Catholic Midwives, and found stead before the Congress for the study of Indo-national calamities, makes a delectuous entree, and finishes off the course between sweets and savories, flouts for forecasts, flares for fines, and the fun of the fray on the fairground, cleared out 365 idols to set up 1 all calassal for henwives hoping to have males, the floor who lack, the grasping one, the kindler of paschal fire, forbids us our trespasses as we forgate him, the phoenix be his fire, Pyre, the Cineres his sire, piles big Pelium on little osses like the Peleus of Herculeads, has an Oedipus complex and a drink the dregs kink, worst meats for chumps, and callows for scullions. When he plies for our favour is very trolley ours. 2 psychic espousals and 3 desertions. May be matter of fact now, but was futter of magd then. Catamole Hill, ex-mountain of flesh, was reared up by stress and sank under strain. Tank it up, dank it up, tells the tailor to his tout. Encout tausas for a man, but bit a thimble for a maid. Blimp, blump, a dumb dud letter, a sing, a song, a syllable, a byword, a sentence with surcease, while stands his can you see him frail shall fall, was hatched at Selbridge, but ejaculated a brood, as it gan in the big guinegs, so wound up in a battle of boss. Roderick, 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 oh, you've gone the way of the Danes, variously catalogued, regularly regrouped. A bush boy's holiday, a quacker's mating, a wench's sandbath, the same homo heterus check-in loss egg, as when solii airly bluely, Real detonation but false report, spar mad but insane, half Emilian by a bogus census but a no-street houseman when all-fanned, is the handiest of all Andes and a most elegant spot to dump your hump. Hands his secession to the new Patricius, but plumps phlegmatically for the bloody old centuries. Eats with doors open and rots with gates closed. Some dub him Rothschild and more lime him Rocky Fellow. Shows he's fly to both demispheres, but thrives to cover up his traces. 7 dovecotes co-claim to have Pigeonheim to his Homer. Smnerion, Roebuck, Collinsray, Sea Point, Keyhouth, Ashtown, Ratheny, independent of the lordship of Chamberlain, acknowledging the rule of Rome. We saw thy farm at useful prime, Domnall, reeks like ill-beheld pace, and looks like Iceland's ear. Lodged at cot paces, lived through tot rains, takes a sunbath for his weekend and a wasser nap for his refreshment. After a good bout at stool ball, gives a girafla. What Nevermore missed and Colombo found. Believes in every man his own gold keeper, and in Africa for the full blacks. The arc of his drive was 40 full, and his stumps were pulled at 80. Boasts him to the thick enthused the oldest creator in Ariania, and looks down on the Swiss family Colossons whom he calls Les Nouvelles Roches. Though his heart, soul, and spirit turn to fair-off times, his love, faith, and hope stick to futurism. Light leg-lifters sense him Suriance from afore, while boor browbenders curse him Grommelance to his hindmost. Between Ulasses and Yelats glimpse of even. The lug his peak has, the look his pile, drinks thar and wadhar for his azama, and eats the unperishable sow to stive off regular rack, the beggar's cloak that them reclined about his paddy stool, the whores winking him as they walk their side, on Christian Mass at Advent Lodge, New Yealand, after a Lenti illness, the reverend Mr. Easterling of Pentecostitis, no followers by bequest, fanfare all private, gone where glory waits him, bulletist, but not here yet, Maxwell Clark. Commingst under articles, but phonished a Bourgeois, from the vat on the beer, through the burr in the dark to the bottle of the Bourne, is A1 and the highest, but his root, filled, fanned of heckleberries, whenas all was tuck and tossed up for him as a youngster to fall foe his of Hockingbeckers, wherein he had gouged the use of raisin, adds elements, das doles, raps rustics, tams turmoil, sass seed enough for assemination, but sues skivvy on the slides. Learned to speak from hand to mouth till he could talk Irish with his eyes shut. Hacked his way through hick hocks, but hanged his help from there hereafters. Rialtos, Annesleague, bin and bowls, to say nothing a talk of Newcomen. The gleam of the glow of the shine of the sun, though the dearth of the blush of the brick of the vile veal of the barnel whom has dust turned to brown. These died to tartan him, rue root, dulse, bracken, teasel, full as ash, sunjune and cress. Long gun, but not for cotton, stood his sharp assault to famine, but grew girther, and girther. He has 24 or so cousins germinating in the United States of America, and a namesake with an initial difference in the once kingdom of Poland. His first's a young rose, and his second's French-Egyptian, and his whole needs a slump of Christie's. Fourth of his pierced part came the woman of his dreams, blood thicker than water last trade overseas. Bishop of Glintylook, Earl of Hoed, you and I are in him surrendered by brown buldens. Ellen's flea perhaps, but Huang Chang every time. He was by one of your high big pipey boys, but fancy him as smoking fags at this time of life. Mount of Mish, Mel of Moy, had 2 cardinal ventures and 3 capital sinks. Has a peep in his pocketbook and a packet boat in his keep. BVH, BLG, PPM, TDS, VBD, TCH, LON. Is breakface, lunger, Dina, and super. As the sweet streets were paved with cold, he felt his toperariety, taught himself skating and learnt how to fall. Distinctly dirty, but rather a dear. Hoveth chiefdoms everywhere, with murder. Ostman Effendi, Serge Padishaw, base too many, outpriams all his parasites. First of the Fenians, Roi des Féninons, His tiara of his scones was held unfillable till one Liam Fale felled him in Westminster, was struck out of his sitem when he rode sourly to Damascus, and to our appalling predicament brought as plagues from Budapest, put a match head on an as alpenstalk, and set the living afire, speared the rod and spoiled the lightning, married with cakes and repunct with pleasure, till he was buried. How happy was he, and he made the welkins ring with Up Micawber, God at the top of the staircase, carry on the mat of straw. The false hood of a spindler web chokes the cave mouth of his unsightliness, but the nestlings that liven his leaf screen sing him a lover of arbites. We strike hands over his bloodied war sheet, but we are pledged entirely to his green mantle. Our friend Vike Legal, our Swarin Foire, under the 4 stones by his streams, who vanished the wassail bowl at the joy of shells. Mora and Laura had a hill of high time looking down on his confusion, till firm look in readiness. Forward spear and the wind foot of Curak strewed the lake mist of Lego over the last of his fields. We darken for you, falterer, in the year of morning, but we'll fiddle to the dim twinklers when the streamly Morven White calls up the sunbeam. His striped pantaloons, his rather strange walk, Herodotus columna erecta, Hagion Shaiton Erephon. Nods a nap for the nonce, but crows cheerio when they get economical, is a simultaneous equator of eliminated integras when 3 upon 1 is by inspection improper, has the most eonical codpiece of confusionist heroism, and that chuffiness of chin of his is like a footsie kungaloo around Tai Shanty land. He's as globeful as a gasometer of lithium and luridity, and he was twice 10 annular years before he wallowed round Radiant Circus. The cable stone at the coping of his cavern is a canine constant, but only an American could approximate the apuprosity of his Atlas allongment. Stickled rights and lefts at Batterstown in his hunt for the boar, truth but made his end with the motorheads that came at him with Camlin Strait. A Hannibal in exhaustive conflict, an Otho to return, burning body to Aga air on melting mountain in wooing wave. We go into him, sleepy children, we come out of him, strucklers for life. He divested to save from the misses' drownings their rival queens, while Grimshav, Bragshaw, and Renshaw made off with his storen clothes, taxed and rated, licensed and ranted. His 3-faced stone head was found on a white horse hill, and the print of his calestuous feet was seen in the goat's grass circle. Pull the blind, toll the deaf, and call dumb, lame, and halty. Miraculone, monstruscaline, led the uplaws at the creation, and hissed a snake charmer off her stays. Hounded becomes haunter, hunter become fox, harrier marries terrier, Tav, Olaf the oxman, Thorka the turable. You feel he as Vespasian, yet you think of him as Aurelius.
Wuggamore, Traditory, Socialite, Commonseer, made a summer assault on our shores, and Bigetti got his sands full. First he shot down Raglan Road, then he tore up Marlborough Place, Crommelech Height, and Cromwell Hill, where a far-famed feet rest when our lurch as lout let free into the Lubar he loved. Marshall called his wardmotes and delimited the main. Netted before nibbling can scarce turn a scale, but, grossed after meals, weighs a town in himself. Banba prayed for his conversion. Burla missed the grand old voice, a colossus among cabbages. A Meryl, a Mera citron of fruits, larger than life, doughtier than death, Grand Turco, Orgman Formant, Lachemburgler, Leperline, the sparkle of his genial fancy, the depth of his calm sagacity, the clearness of his spotless honor, the flow of his boundless benevolence. Our family forbear, our tribal tarnpike, quarry was the eh, invincible, and Kerr was his Bert, partitioned irksome home, united Irishman. He took a svig at his own mither, but she tested a bit gorky, and as for the salmon he was coming up in him all life long, come, Eldritch, Heckleberry, the Sawyer, thee, Warden, silent as the bee in honey, stark as the breath on Hawk, Costell, Kinsella, Mahoney, Morin. Though you rope Amric, your home ruler is Dan. Figure right, he is hoisted by the scurve of his shaggy neck. Figure left, he is rotated in isobaric patties among the crew. One asked, was he poisoned? One thinks, how much did he leave? Ex-gardener, Reisenberger, fitted up with Platarius existence, would make Rosen Rosa greedy mites, little hose, taut sheets and scruppers awash, but the oil silk Mac leaps leapsterpert. Mix his aquascrutum, the enjoyment he took in K woman, the employment he gave to G men, sponsor to a squad of piercers, allied to a host of Rowleys, against lightning, explosion, fire, earthquake, flood, whirlwind, burglary, third party, rot, loss of cash, loss of credit, impact of vehicles, can rant as grave as oxtail soup and chat as gay as a Porto flippant, is unhesitant in his unionism and yet a bigoted nationalist. Sylvia Cola and shy of him, Matro Henshosen's knows the joke, shows the sinews of peace in his Chester Wars, Fee File Home, 930 and 39 years of copyhold, is all days open for poly polim polities seek when he's not sometimes closed for the love of Janus. Sucks life's elixir from the petty pickles of the juices of rules and sulks in any pulpulating runs down the Huguenots, Bonaparte, Wallace's, Ubermerschals, Blocher and Supercharged, Monsieur Ducrot, Mr. Mudson, Master Gardener, to one he's just paunch and juxt, to another full of beans and burhones, hallucination, Kochman, ectoplasm, paused by Baba Black Sheep till he grew white woolly, was dramatized by Mac Milligan's daughter and put to music by one shoe bard. All Fitzpatrick's is the emirate remember him. The boys of Wetford hail him Babu, and defied him with borough tribute, and was checked publicly to Brigstol. Was given the light of Dre, Auschwitz, and Etumold in three plexes, his likeness in the terrasuit, and he giveth rest to the rainbowed. Liberty, forthnarity, and quality. His reserve makes the virtue of necessity, while his observe mars a mother by invention. Beskilt his gunwale, and he's the second imperial, untie points, unhook tenators, and he's ith and plaster. Calls calls upon all thing when he fails to appeal to each of us. Besides Ardreen, Cogsema, Rex Regularum, stood into D mouth, then backed broadside onto Bolchaclevi, either Eldorado or Ultimate Thole. A crawl of faux feud fires, a crawl of five pubs, lied, laid out lashing of laveries to hunt down his family ancestors, and then pleb double trouble to quick quits the hush of buckers up through peblets for luck over one sodden shoulder, and dragoon peablards armed to their teeth. Pept the Gurado Gambrius, grim as Potter the Grave, ace of arts, deuce of diamonds, trouble of clubs, fear of spats, cum brum, twice in Uries, four a drum, but tree and uno tips the scale, reeled the the title roll opposite the brace of the girdles in silver on the screen, but with sequins from the set of crookback by the even more titulars Rick, Dave, and Barry. He can get on as early as the 22nd of Mars, but occasionally he doesn't come off before Virgin Antiquity Griminal. His Indian name was Hapapusa Labajibawe, and his number was Arthrosophy in the stars of the plough. Took weapon in the providence of the pike, and let fling the line of Elwick, moves the vicious circles, yet renews the same. The drain rats bless his offals, while the park birds curse his floodlights. Portobello, Aqueduct, Treticoda, Pericola, Pedicorolo.
He pours into the soft-clad Shelbourne the hard cash earned in Watling Street. His birth proved accidental shows his death its grave mistake. Brought us giant ivy from the land of Yonkers, and bewithered Apostopolos with the gale of his gall, while satisfied that soft, youthful, bright, matchless girls should bosom into fine, silk-clad, joyous, blooming young women, is not so pleased that heavy, swearsome, strong-smelling, irregular-shaped men should blot out active, handsome, well-formed, frank-eyed boys. Herald Harry Fair, all oaf the wheat. Husband your aunt and endow your nepos. Hearken, but hush it. Screen him and see. Time is an archbishopric. Time was a tradesman's entrance. Beckbourne brooked with wath, scale scarred by scow. His rainfall is a couple of knee-highs, while his meanst grass temperature marked 3 in the shade. Is the melting point of snow and the bubbling place of alcohol. Has a tussle with the trolls and then does himself justice. Hinted at the eschatological chapters of Humphrey's Justesse of the Japies, and hunted for by Theban recensors who sniff there's something behind the bug of the deaf. The king was in his corner wall, milking Mark O'Murray. The queen was steep in arm-bore, feeling fain and furry. The maids was midst the hawthorns, shoeing up their hose. Out pimps the back guards, pop! And pump gun they goes. To all his foretellers he reared a stone, and for all his come-ethers he planted a tree. 40 acres, 60 miles, white stripe, red stripe. Washes his foot in Anacre water. Woo missed a porter, so what shall he do? For he wanted to sit for Pimp Loco, but they've caught him to stand for Sue. Dutch Lord, overawes us, head-mound king and martyr. Dun stung in the east, Pitrelapor in Petrin, Barth the Greet by the exchange, he hastens toward dame's troth and wedding hand, like the Prince of Orange and Nassau, while he has Trinity left behind him, like Bull-beggar Bill the Bustonley, brow of a Hazelwood, pool in the dark, changes Blowicks into bullocks, and a well of Artesia into a bird of Arabia. The handwriting on his face wall, the cryptoconchoid siphonostomata in his expressions. His birth spot lies beyond the Hellespont, and the burial plot in the pleasant little field is the idlest kiosk on the peninsula and the unguessed hostel in St. Scholarland. Walked many hundreds and many score miles of streets, and lit thousands in one night lights in hectares of windows. His great wide cloak lies on 15 acres, and his little white horse decks by dozens our doors. Oh, sorrow the sail and woe the rudder that were set for merry quail. His sons, the Huns, his darters, the Tartars, are plenty here today, who repulsed from his burst the bombolts of Ostendun and Falchion, each flash downs a duck in the deep. A personal problem, a locative enigma, upright one, vehicule of arcanization in the field, lying chap, flood supplier of seliculation through eblanes, a part of the whole as a port for a whale. Dear Hewitt Costello, equerry, we're daylighted with our outing and are looking backwards to unearly summers. From rhododendrons is above the seed fruit level and outside the leguminiferous zone. When older links lock older hearts, then he'll resemble she, can be built with glue and clippings, scrawled or voided on a buttress. The Night Express sings his story, the song of sparrow notes on his stave of wires. He crawls with lice, he swarms with segarts, is quiet as a mersk, but can be noisy as a sonagogue. Was Dilmun when his date was palmy, and Moodloon when his nut was cracked. Suck up the cease, lep laud at ease, one lip on his lap and one cushlin his crease. His porter was a mighty grasp, and his Baxter's the boon of Broadwhite. As far as wind dries and rain eats and sun turns and water bounds, he is exalted and depressed, assembled and asundered. Go away, we are deluded. Come back, we are disghosted. Bored the Ostrov, leapt the Inferus, swam the Mobble, and floor the Moil, like fat, like tallow of greasefulness, yea, of dripping greasefulness, did not say the old, did not say to the scorbutic. He has found a house, Uru, a house he has found to which he has assigned its fate, bears a raven gulant on a field duve, ruse the halo off his varlet when he appeared to his shecock as haycock, emmet, boaro, toaro, ostrich, mangian skunk, press the beer of ailed age out of the nettles of rashness, put a roof on the lodge for him and a coke in his pot pro homo, was dapifer than panciricensir, then Hortifex Magnus, the topes that had tippled on him, the types that toppled off him, still starts our hares, yet gates our goat, pocketbook, packet boat, gapman, gunrun, the light of other days, dire dreary darkness, our awful dad, Timor of Tortor, puzzling, startling, shocking, nay, perturbing, went puffing from Kingsborough to New Customs, doffing the gibbous off him to every breach of all size, with Pa's new hef and Papa's new helve, he's Papa's old cutlass, Papa left us. When young-headed, old-shouldered, and middleish-necked age about, collar herring every daily, turgid tarpon overnight. See Lorien the chameleon that changed endocrine history by lavin his loaf with 40 bannocks. She drove him dafe till he driv her blind up. The pigeons doves be perchin' all over him one day in Baseless Bridge, and the ravens dove be pitchin' their dark nets after him the next night behind Kenningston's arbor. Trumph of the rep, comf of the priv, prosp of the pub, his headwood its ideal if his feet are bally clay. He crashed in the hollow of the park, trees down as he soared in the vagum of the phoenix, stones up. Looks like a moltane bolter and sounds like a rude word. The moontane view, some lumen pale round a lump of sukar in buoyant water, 3 shots of pooty at up blup saddle, made up to Miss McCormack nee Lacarthy, who made off with Darley Dermid, swank and swarthy. Once Diamond cut Garnet, now Dammit cuts Groney. You might find him at the Florence, but watch out for him in Wynn's Hotel. There's his bow, and where's his leaker, and here lays his bequiet hearse, deep, Swed Albioni, likeliest villain of the place, Henry Canterell, Cochrane, egotisters limated. We take our tays and freeze our fleas round Saturn's mounted foot, built the Lundskirk and destroyed the church's land, who guess his title, grabs his deeds, Fletch and Pretties, Fash and Chaps, artful Juke of Wilsley, Hugglebellies, Finneral, Cookhook, Kallikak, heard in camera and excruciated, Boon one with benches billeted, ban if buckshot backshatters, heaven-gendered, shouse-footed, earthborn, his father presumptively ploughed it deep in overtime, and his mother, as all Evans, must have travailed her fair share. Footprints, oh my gosh. My brain just lost all this. Right.
A footprints on the megacene, Hetman unhorsed by Searing Sand, honorary captain of the extemporized fire brigade, reported to be friendly with the police. The door is still open. The old stock collar is coming back, not forgetting the time you laughed at Elder Charterhouse's duck white pants, and the way you said the whole township can see his hairy legs. By stealth of a curse, her auburn tress abaft his nape she hung. When his kettle became a health sculdus, our Thorsites set their lymphat aphramire, his year letter concocted by master hands of essays, his hallmark imposed by the standard of wrought plate, a pair of pectorals and a triple screen to get a wind up, lights his pipe with a rosin tree, and hires a tow horse to haul his shoes, cures slavy's scurvy, breaks baron's boils, called to sell polosh, and was found later in a bedroom, has his seat of justice, his house of mercy, his cornucopious, and his stacks of rye, prospector. He had a rucksacked retrospector. He holds the hope and stake, won the freedom of new yoke for the minds of Jugo slaves, acts active, peddles in pacifism, and is a gorgon of self-righteousness, pours a last verse of his ill formation over a lamb's worth of salt, half heard the single maiden speech La Belle spun to her ground mount, and hold a lifetime by his ain fireside, wondering was it Hebrew set to himmeltones or the quicksilver song of quaternions. The trouble may be over, but his doubles have yet still to come. The lobster pot that crabbed our keel, the garden pet that spoiled our squeezed peas. He stands in a lovely park. Sea is not far. Importunate towns of X, Y, and Z are easily overreached, is an excrescence of to civilized humanity and but a wart on Europe. Wanna-made sing signs to sound sense, as yet he wanna get all his flesh new-made mots truly plural and plausible, has excisively large rings, and is uncustomarily perfumed. Lusteth he listeth the clear withbeth of a themeth, is a prince of the Fingalian in a Hiberniad of hoolies, has a Hodge to wherry him, and a Frenchie to curry him, and a Brabanson for his beater, and a Fritz at his switch, was waylaid of a Parker and beshgotten by a Buckley, kicks lintels when he's cuppy, and casts Jacob's arrowroots, dime after dime, to poor waif strays on the parish, reads the charms of H.C. Anderson all the weeks of his evening, and the crimes of Ivan the Terrible every strong day morn, soaps you soft to your safe face, and slaps himself when he's badent, owns the bulgiest bung barrel that ever was tip-tapped in the privace of the Mullingar Inn, was born with a newer silver tongue in his mouth, and went round the coast of iron with his lift hand to the scene, raised but 2 fingers, and yet smelt it would day, for whom it is easier to found a sea in a blanna than for I or you to find a double tie in Damsterdam, to live with whom is a life mare, and to know whom a liberal education, was dipped in holy olives and christened in St. O'Toole's, his cricket on the earth but annoys the life out of predicants, still turns the dirk's ear of Darius to the now thoroughly infuriated one of God, made man with juts that jerk and minted money mong many, likes a 6-a-cup pudding when he's come whom, sweet whom, has come through all the eras of Liv's adventure, from moonshine and champagne down to clouts and pottled porter. Willem the Fast, Hanreich the Alf, Charge the Second, Right Chad the Thought. If a mandrake shriek to convultures, at last surviving his birth, the wibe-duck will wail bitterly over the rotter's resurrection, loses weight in the moon night, but girder by the sundawn, with one touch of nature, set a veiled world again, and went within a sheet of tissue paper of the option of 3 jails, who could see at one blick a salmon taken with a lance, hunters pursuing a doe, a swallow ship in full sail, a white robe lifting a host, faced flappery like King Canute, and turned his back like Cincinnatus, is a far, far, and more far, and whore farther naked bucker in villas old as new, squats a quart and cracks a quaint when it's flagging in town and on haven, blows whiskery around his summit, but stets stout upon his footless, stutters for he falls, and goes mad entirely when he's waked, is Tim to the pearly morn, and Tom to the morning night, and he had the best bun-baked bricks in bold Babylon for his pitching plays, he'd be lost for the want of his one wobbling wall? Answer! Finn McCool!
2. Does your mother know your Mike? Answer. When I turned me up dicks from Sherborne prospects, 'tis my flilla bosom doth behold with pride the pontificator, the circumvallator, with his damn knight Garrulus slipped by his side, and alive, the lisp of her, 'twould Grieg mountains whisper her, and the bergs of Iceland melt in waves of fire, and her spoon me spondies, and her dirkle me ondies, make the rageous ocean kneel and quaff a lyre. If Dan's Dane, Anne's dirty. If he's plain, she's purty. If he's fain, she's filthy. With her burnt streams, and her coy cajoleries, and her dabbling drolleries, for to rouse his rudder up, or to drench his dreams. If not, Hammurabi or cold Celestius could esp her pranklings, they'd bust bounds again and renounce their ruins, and denounce their doings for river and ever and a night. Amen.
Which title is the true to type motto in lieu for that tick for teak thatchment, painted wit with one darkness, where a snake is under cover and birds a prowl are in the rookeries, and a Magda went to Monk's house, and a river pard was spotted, which is not witchcraft, war Horwort, nor Osterholm Dreisluis, nor Haraldsby grocer, not Vadenkan vintner, not houseboat, not and hive, not Noxatabel, not Ophanix Colprince, not Wolnsquar Rumyek, not Eblon Downs, not Ledicer Lemieux, not Benjamin's Lee, not Tholomew's Waddington, not Antwerp, not Musca, not Corey's, not Weir's, not the Arch, not the Smug, not the Dutch House, not the Uval, nothing grand, nothing splendid, Gahat or Splatel, nay there, erat est erit, nor non mici sed luci fro. Answer. Thine obesity, O civilian, hits the felicitude of our orb.
4. What Irish capital city, oh dear, of 2 syllables and 6 letters, with a Celtic origin and numinous ed, dust, dust, can boast of having A. The most extensive public park in the world, B. The most expensive brewing industry in the world, C. The most expansive peopling thoroughfare in the world, D. The most philohopic theobubus population in the world, and harmonize your abecedated responses. Answer A. Delphas. And when ye'll hear the gould homers of my heart, my floxy loss, bing-banging again the ribs of your resistance and the tender bolts of my rivets working to your distraction, you'll be shelvering with all your dinful sobs when we'll go riding a cope a curly, you with your orange garland and me with my conny cordial, down the greaseways of rollicking into the waters of wetted life. B. Dorquikuk. And sure where you can have such good old chimes anywhere, and leave you, as on the mash and how 'tis, I would be engaging you with my plovery soft accents, and descanting up over the scene beyond me of your loose vines, in their hairfall with them, 2 loving loofs braceleting the slims of your ankles, and your mouth's flower rose and sinking off to the soapstone of silvery speech. C. Noblid. Isha, why wouldn't we be happy, Avernine? On the mill's money, he'll soon be leaving you as soon as I've mine owned Brookline Georgian Mansion's lawn to recruit upon by Dr. Cheek's special orders, and my copper paneful of soybeans and Irish in my east hand and a James Gated in my west, after all the arrears and erroribus of commemorative embottled history, and your good self churning over the new leave butter. More power to you. The choicest and the cheapest from Atlanta to Oconee, while I'll be drowsing in the garden. D. Dalway. I hooked my thoroughgoing trotty, the first down Spanish place. Mayo I make, towel I take, Sligo's sleek, but Galway's grace. Holy eel and sainted salmon, chucking chub and ducking dace. Rod iron's not your equal, says she, lepping half the lane. Abacid. A bell, on Shaldal Steepbell, on Bilgo Basplon Pristmoss people, Shan praise gon Ness, our faced mon Neeple, our prame shay deepen, pay name me feepence, moi name non equal.
5. Wad slags of the Lao lad had written smutty flecks, imped out old man's milk vicious geet, scare off Jack and Jill's for a tittle ending smooth pick, waste popish pastures inside man outsiders angle, sprick dirted water around villages, newses, toboggan, and Swedes, plain general kept Loudon on the Kirkpeel. For treats given the Malefids, outshriek help, help, nor his hair after beggarlaws might underhold 3 barnets, putz polish, crotchy bottles, night cover all fire glims, serves time till bass, grindstone his knives, fullest boarded, lewd man and the method of godliness. Perchance he meows and Thane sits in the spore wagon. XWCA on ZWCU. Doorsteps limited or bay windows bros swabber preferred. Walters clusters and Sons with the H.E. Chimmins Company to Knott's Grave will, on advices, be bacon or stable hand, must be beg ripe, full standingly airs language, Gerblander or Northquain, bigger preferred, all duties, kind rights, family feud, outings 5, may get ernst, no get combished profusely, drinks lords to please abstain. He is fatherlow, sound digging, emo mind, pershun, but alconemen? Nay, that must he isn't. Answer. Poor old Joe.
6. What means the saloon slogan, summon in the house sweep, Dinah? Answer, talk. Gallery bit of the sales of cloth now, and I have to beeswax the bringing in all the cloub of the porks to us. How I thought I knew his stain on the flour, if me ask, could speak, and he called me midden name Tick. I am your honey speak, and I am your honey sugar, foot, the bay, and who brook the dandalas, and who seen the black cullen jam for Tomorha's big picnic. I hope it'll pour, praise the climate of all Ireland. I heard the grackles, and I skimming the crock on all your sandwiches, fippence per leg per drake, took. And who ate the last of the goose bellies that was molding from measliest years? And who left that there? And who put that here? And who let the Kilkenny stale the chump? Tech. And who was it propped the pot in the yard? And what in the name of St. Luke are you rubbing the side of the floor of the lobby with? Shite. Will you have a plateful? Tack.
7. Who are those competent partners of our societate? The doorboy, the cleaner, the soger, the crook, the squeezer, the lounger, the kerman, the tourabout, the mushroom sniffer, the bleaker blue tramp, the fun pouther plother, the Christy man's boxer, from their prey sales and Donnybrook prater and Roebuck's campos and the ager around town and Crumglen's grassy but Kimmage's champ and Ashtown fields and Cabra fields and Finglass fields and Santry fields and the fields of Rayany and their fails and Baldoyle, to them who are latecomers all the years round by anticipation, are the porters of the passions in virtue of retro-ratio-cernation, and contributing their conflingent controversies of differentiation, unify their voxes in a vote of vaticanation, who crunch the crusts of comfort due to depredation, drain the mead for misery to incur intoxication, condone every evil by practical justification, and condemn any good to its own gratification, who are ruled, roped, duped, and driven by those new men daemons, the fee-keepers at their laws, nightly consternation, fortnightly fornication, monthly misericordiation, and omni-annual recreation, Doyles when they deliberate, but Sullivans when they are swordsed, Matey, Teddy, Simon, John, Peter, Andy, Barty, Philly, Jamesy Moore, and Tom, Matt and Jakes McCarty? Answer, the Morpheos.
8. And how wore your Maggies? Answer, they wore loving, they love laughing, they laugh weeping, they weep smelling, they smell smiling, they smile hating, they hate thinking, they think feeling, they feel tempting, they tempt daring, they dare waiting, they wait taking, they take thanking, they thank seeking, as born forlorn and lore of love, to live and wive and wile and rile, by rule of ruse, weathered rose, and yeah, and holes hold home, yeath cometh elope year, coach of four, sweet peck of my heart picks one man more.
9. Now, to be on anew and basking again in the panorama of all flores of speech. If a human being, duly fatigued by his deity in the sooty, having planksty time off in his gouty hands, and vacance of space at his sleepish feet, and as hapless behind the dreams of accuracy as any Camelot prince of Denmark, were at this actual futile preteritating unstant in the states of suspensive examination, accorded throughout the eye of a noodle with an ear-sighted view of old Hopenhaven, with all the ingredient and egrugiant whites and ways to which, in the course of his persistence, the course of his Tory will had been having recourses, the reverberation of not cracking awes, the reconjugation of node-binding eyes, the redissolucingness of mind-mouldered ease, and the thereby hang of the whole of it, could such a nun, whiles even led come silencers to come lie with hers, and till in tempestuous knocks should catch the gallicry and spot Lucan's dawn, by hold at one's what is main and why 'tis twain, how one once meat melts in t'other wants poindings, the sap rising, the foals falling, the nim now nihilant round the girly head so becoming, the restless in the womb, all the rivals to all see, shake again, O disaster, shake a lows, oh how starring. But Hang's got a bit of horse's nose, and Jeff's got the signs of ham round his mouth, and the bow that spun beautiful pales as it palls, what rosaroot and oragius grows gelb and green, blue out the end of it, violets dyed, then what would that fargazer seem to seem self, to seem seeming of, dim it all? Answer, a collid Dior escape.
10. What bitters love but yearning? What sour love much but a brief burning, till she that draws doth smoke return? Answer. I know, Pepette, of course, dear, but listen, precious. Thanks, pet, these are lovely, petunious, delicious, but mind this wind, sweet. What exquisite hands you have, you Angiole, if you didn't gnaw your nails. Isn't it a wonder you're not ashamed of me, you pig, you pervy little pigoline? I'll nudge you in a minute. I bet you use her best Parisian schmear off her vanity tables to make them look so rose-top, glow-stop, non-stop. I know her. Slide me, would she? For every got I care. 3 creamings a day, the first during her shower and wipe off with tissue. Then after clean-up, of course, before tiring. Be me shawl, when I begin to think of that S-boss of a Clancarby, the food brawler, of the Social Nicholas's party, with his black-leaded chest, hello, Prendergrass, in that you, Inkipper, and all his 14 other fullback maulers, or hurling stars, or whatever the dagos they are, baiting at my Lord Ornery's, just because they won the egg and spoon there so overly provincial at Baldol. My Eilish assent, he seed makes his admiration. He is seeking an opening and means to be first with me as his belle alliance. Andu musnu play zeloso, so to do todas. Such as Spanish. Stoop a little closer, feels. Delightsome, simply. Like Jolio and Romion. I haven't felt so Turkish for ages and ages. Mine's of me squacious, the chocolate with a soul, extraordinary. Why, what are they all, the mucky lot of them only? Sht! I wouldn't pay 3 hairpins for them. Pepped. That's right, hold it steady. Leg me pull. Pooh. Come big to Iran. Pooh. What are you nudging for? No, I just thought you were. Listen, loveliest. Of course, it was too kind of you, miser, to remember my size and shockings, my often expressed wish when you were wondering about my trousers, and before I forget it, don't forget, in your extensions to my personality when knotting my remembrance and tie. Shoe week will be trotting back with red heels at the end of the moon, but look what the fool bought cabbage head. And as I shall answer to gracious heaven, I'll always in always remind of snapping new girders, me being always the one for charms with my very best in proud and gloving, even if he was to be the 1,000,000 miles my youth to live on, the rubber-end Mr. Polkington, the Quonian fleshmonger who Mother Brown solicited me for unlawful converse with her mug of October, a pot's on it, creaking around on his old shank axle like a crusty old cornquake. Airman, waterwag, terrier, blazer. I'm fine, thanks ever. Ha! Oh, mind you, Pooh Tickly. Sall I push 'em in Momo? Funny spot to have a fingy. I'm terribly sorry, I swear to you I am. May you never see me in my birthday pelt, seen so tutu, where that her blanches mangers, ray rot leprous off her whatever stinking magus. I'll bet by your cut you go flirting after, with all the glass on her and the jumps in her stumware. Ha ha! I suspected she was. Sink her. May they fire her for a barren ewe. So she says, tay for thee? Well, I saith, angst mo so much, and desired she might not take it amiss if I esteemed her but an odd. If I did 8 tough turf, I'm not a mishy-missy. Of course I know, pettest, you're so learningful and considerate in yourself, so friend of vegetables, you long cold cat you. Please by acquiescer to meek my acquaintance. Codling, snakelet, iciclist, my diaper has more life to it. Who drowned you in drears, man, or are you pale with ink? Did a weep get past the gates of your pride? My tread on the clover, sweetness? Yes, the buttercups told me, hug me, damn it all, and I'll kiss you back to life, my peachest. I mean to make you suffer, meddler, and I don't care this fig for contempt of courting. That I chid you, sweet sir, you know I'm tender by my eye. Can't you read by dazzling ones through me true? Bite my laughters, drink my tears, pour into me volumes, spell me stark and spill me swooning. I just don't care what my thwarters think. Transname me loveliness, now and here for me for all times. I'd risk a policeman passing by, Magrath, or even that beggar of a boots at the post. The flame? Oh, pardon. That was what? Ah, did you speak? Stuff? More poestries from the Chickspears with gleatorial music or ejaculation from the garden of the soul. Of I be a leab in the immoralities? Oh, you mean the strangle for love and the so I've all of the prettiest? Yep, we often hap coseries in the home, and once upon a week I improve upon myself. I'm so keen on that new free woman with novel inside. I'm always as tickled as can be over man in a surplus by the lady who pays the rates, but I'm as pie as possible. Let's root out Brimstoker and give him the thrall of our lives. It's Dracula's nights a night out. For creep's sake, don't make a flush. Draw the shades, curfew, and I'll make any sonomonk to love. Holy bug, how my highness would have jumped to make you flame your halve, a bandman in 2 when I'd run my burning torchlight through, to adore me there and cease to be. Whatever for, blossoms? Your hammy-jig, if you had one. If I am laughing with you? No, lovingest, I'm not so dying to take my rise out of you, adored. Not in the very least. True as God made my more hip-length modesty coath-mortar. It's only because the reason is I'm only any girl, you lovely fellow of my dreams, and because old Sumbooby is not a roundabout, my trysting of the tulipies like that puff-pate bucking Daverin assaulting us behinds. What a nerve. He thinks that's what Vesperi's for. How vain's that hope in cleric's heart who still pursues the adult rouse art, cocksure that rusty gown of his will make fair Sue forget his fizz. Tame Schwips, blessed Marguerite bosses. I hope they threw away the mould, or else we'll have balls hosses and salmadapplers with their medical assassinations all over the place. But hold hard till I've got my latchkey vote, and I'll teach him when to wear that what woman colours. On account of the gloss of the Gleecian Hazabrew Brawbies is a bauble. And because you pluckless lankaloot, I hate the very thought of you, and because adorest, I was always meant for an engineer from the French college, to be musband, nom de igion. When we do and contract with Encho Tencho Solver, when you are married to reading and writing, which please business now won't be long, for he's so loopy on me, and I'm so leapy like since the day he carried me from the boat, my savoury to heroes, to the beach, and I left on his shoulder one fair hair to guide hand and mind to its softness. Ever so sorry. I beg your pardon, I was listening to every treasured word, and I said fell from my dear Mott's tongue otherwise, and how could I see what you were thinking of our granny? Only I wondered if I threw out my shaving water. Anyway, here's my arm, pullet neck. Gracefully yours. Move your mouth towards ninth. More, preciousest, more on more. To please me, treasure. Don't be a... I'm not going to. Shh, nothing. A cry somewhere. Bye-bye. I'm fly. Here, Pippi, under the limes. You know big tree are all against gravestone. They hiss an entity. Ground on command. So chip, chirp, Kiglo for the lug of my go. The little pastor I go to you before, so, and you're at my apron stage. Shy as him, Dovey. Must forget there's an audience. I have been lost, angel. Cuddle ye, devil ye. It's a toot-a-toot. Here, sensation. Let them their whole 4 courtships. Let them big ball in his boozer's 11 make 12 territorials. The old sots hole that wants wide streets to commission their noisance in at the Mitchell versus Nichols Aves Silvae Aquae Vallis, and my waiting 20 class birds sitting on their stiles. Let me finger their eurythmerate, and you'll see if I'm self-thought. They're all of them out to please. Wait, in the name of, and all the holly, and some the missal and its St. Eves. Hoost, ahem, there's Ada, Bet, Celia, Delia, Ina, Freda, Gilda, Hilda, Ita, Jess, Catty, Lou, they make me cough as sure as I read them, Mina, Nipper, Opsy, Pol, Queenly, Ruth, Sorksy, Trix, Una, Vella, Wanda, Zinnia, Eva, Zulma, Phoebe, Thelma, and me! The reformatory boys is going in for the church, so we've all come feast like the group suppers, and court lip solution from anti-providence under penancies for mortal sins. When their bride was married, all my bells began to sing. A ring, a rosa ring, and then everyone will hear of it. Whose wishes is the father to my thoughts, but I'll plant them a poser for their nomenclator. When they're out with the day nurse during chaperon mall, bright pigeons all over the world will fly with my mistletoe message around their love ribbon necks and a crumb of my cake for each chasta diva. We keeps all in sundry papers. In the Amor Lightor, my darling. No, I swear to you by Phibbsborough Church Dome and St. Andre's Undershift, by all I hold secret from my world and in my underworld of nighties and naughties and all the other wonder worlds. Close your... Not must look... Now open, pet, your lips, pipette, like I use my sweet-parted lipsibus with Dan Holohan of facetious memory taught me after the flannel dance with the proof of love up Smock Alley the first night he smelled powder, and I coloured beneath my fan pipetta mia when you learned me the linguo to melt. Who ham would have the ears like ours, the black-haired? Do you like that, Silenzio? Are you enjoying the same little me, my love, my life? My love, why do you like my wisping? Is it not divinely deluscious? But isn't it buff for you? Missy, tell me till my thrill me comes. I will not break the seal. I am enjoying it still, I swear I am. Why do you prefer it in these dark nets? If why may ask, my sweetikins. Shh. Long ears is flying. No, sweet cest. What would that annoy me? But don't. You want to be slapped for that. Your delighted lips, love, be careful. Mine my divine dress above all. It's golden Sylvie, the newest sex tones with princess effect. For Rutland Blue has got out of passion. So, my precious. Oh, I can see the cost chair. Don't tell me. Why, the boy in Sheep's Lane knows that. If I sell whose, dears? Was I sold here, tears? You mean those conversation lozenges? How awful. The bold shame of me. I wouldn't, chickens, not for all the Juliets in twinkly way. I could snap them when I see them winking at me in bed. I did so, my intended, or was going to, or thinking of. Shh. Don't start like that, you wretch. I thought ye knew all and more, ye author, to explic to ones the significat of their ex-systems with your new Nivillon lead. It's only another queer fish or another in Brinbrow's damned old treacherous liver again. Go the wish Goths bless us and spare her, and Jibos rest with the bosso. Excuse me for swearing, love. I swear to the Sorosims on their trons of Yuan, I didn't mean to by this apen armlet. Did you really never in all our Canterlang lives speak close to a girl's before? No? Not even to the charmer-maid? How marvellous! And course I believe you, my old dear doting liest, when you tell me, as I'd live to, oh, I'd love to, liss, I must wiss. Never that ever, or I can remember dear streaming faces, you may go through me. Never in all my whole white life of my matchless and pair, or ever for bitter be the fruct of this hour. With my whiteness I thee woo, and bind my silk breaths as I thee bound. Always, armoury, more and more, till always thou lovest. So long as the locksmith laughs. That was the first half of chapter 1-6 from Finnegans Wake. Aili, what do you think?
Wow. There's that's You know what's interesting actually is when you hear it aloud, you can hear all of the other writers that were influences on Joyce. Like for example, Dr. Seuss's first book was published 2 years before this one, and I think they may have in fact overlapped in their time in the British Isles when Dr. Seuss was there I think he was on a Fulbright fellowship. He was at Oxford. So, you can imagine that they were in the pub and Dr. Seuss was like, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street and James Joyce was like, "Oh shit, I'm going to write that down."
So TJ, this is the play that you need to write,
Right?
which is Dr. Seuss meets James Joyce in a
It's
pub.
like it's like Wittenberg except
Yeah.
not.
When you give an Irishman an idea, that's what it's called.
Yes, that's what it's called.
Yeah, dude, I don't. This happens to me every time, and what we're 11 episodes in, and it still happens to me every time. I'm like, I know words until I see a word that's not the word that I think it is, and then my brain's like, you don't know words. What are words? Words are fake. And I find myself tripping over words. I'm like, I read these words every day, every time.
Well, and particularly since this one is in many ways a deceptively accessible section.
Yeah.
Because you've got the numbers that break down each question, and then you get almost a header of what the question is, and then the answer. And obviously, the first question is 10 pages long.
By the time we got to the answer, I was like, "This was a question." I forgot this was a question.
You forget the form. Yeah. It's the thing that keeps happening in this book is that you think you know the form, and then he changes it, which changes your understanding about the way you should read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that one's sort of such a fascinating one, that first one, where you could really spend the rest of your life unpacking all of those different allusions to who Finn McCool, the great Irish hero, was, the mythical hero.
Mm-hmm.
All these references and what he's trying to get at. And obviously people have done a lot of that. But getting in and going, and I kept sort of finding these references or these allusions that he's making, and then he's corrupting them so that they're almost impenetrable. But then there's very clearly a story in there of part of his legend is all in there. And it's like we talked about a few weeks ago, where this book contains all of human knowledge if you unpack it enough. And that section, that 10 pages, is what Joyce needed to describe all of the traits of Finn McCool. Whereas others, which are, I'm going to tell you all the facts we know about Dublin or the cities of Ireland.
What was it like reading it, Aili? What was it?
Oh my God. It's funny is like there were moments when I would start to say something and like just barely into it, I would realize that it was funny,
Mhm.
There'd be a moment where I'd be like, oh, I get it. Like it's rhyming with this other thing, or I kind of catch, oh, this is spelled strangely, but when I say it aloud, it means this, So that was kind of interesting, but it definitely felt a little bit like a bit of a meditation almost, just like set your brain on and go. Like I could like say the words and I couldn't quite process more than like 3 at a time. I also think we were talking earlier about whether this is inaccessible or whatever. I think that this edition, the way that it's formatted, makes it less accessible because there's hyphenation at word breaks, right?
Yes.
So you're trying to track like what's the next thing.
Yeah.
And like I could imagine, I'm sure Joyce would kind of hate this, but I could imagine a version of this that was formatted in such a way that it kind of at least broke out the clauses each on their own line that would be much more readable. Because yeah, there were moments where I was like, what's next? Where am I going as I loop to the next line?
And it's funny, you're right, that you do have to, you just have to turn your brain off and go. And that moment where you're like, I can't get back in this right now, because it's so hard. It's not like a book where someone can interrupt you and you're like, I'm just going to pick up on the sentence where I left off. It's not
No.
possible.
What sentence was that again?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I found that every now and then you get on a roll and you're going and you're like, oh, I'm hitting all the words, I'm getting there, and it feels kind of like playing like the boss level of a video game with one life left, and you're like, and
You're in the flow.
and suddenly you get in your own head and you're like, oh, I've gone 12 lines without making a mistake, and so then you start thinking, okay, you can't make mistakes. You figured it out. And then of course you fall over because you're slain by an elf.
I was so upset. I was destroyed by a page turn, because
Yeah.
I was like, wait, that last word is "and," and I was like, was that "and"? Yes, it was.
And I think that reading it out loud really gives us just that different kind of insight that you can't get. And I remember when we did our first episode, we were very smug and cynical when we read somewhere that someone said that there's a laugh on every page. And we went, yeah, right, this isn't funny. But it's true. There's so much humor in it, and so much, he's so playful, and and yeah, lots of moments. And the things that are coming up in this chapter, I'll just read from the Oxford World Classic summaries from each of these sections, following the page and line numbering convention standard in this text. So we read from page 126 to 148. And so the first section that we talked about, 126 to 139.14, so that's 13 pages, is the first question, clues for both HCE and Finn McCool, and HCE being our protagonist, combined into Finn McCool. So that sort of really exploding out HCE's relevance here. 139.13 to 143.28. Question 2 is about ALP. Question 3 is the city's motto. Question 4 is the four as cities of Ireland. Question 5, Sigurdsson / poor old Joe. Question 6, Kate. Question 7, the 12 / the Irish people. Question 8, the 28 leap year girls / the Maggies.
Question 9. Is? So what are the people born on my birthday feeling?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And you read
I
that
feel
section.
all these things all the time.
Question 9 is the vision. And then we have from 143 to 29 to 148.32 is question 10. This is my favorite one. And having this context, going back and reading this the last section we did. Question 10 is Izzy's deranged attempt at seduction, which, when is a lot of trying to force someone to give it up. Very interesting stuff there. So obviously a lot of that meaning doesn't come through.
Not readily, no.
But bits and pieces I find, and particularly when it's broken down into these short questions and we're all taking a different question each and then asking these like it was this big quiz. Again, I feel as though it's a little bit more accessible than others.
I keep coming back to it's like degrees of accessibility, right? Like we are choosing to sit down and read this. And even when you first interact with Shakespeare, you're like, this feels inaccessible, but after a while you get into the rhythm and you know what it is, right? But because this constantly changes what that rhythm is and right? It feels like you're having to constantly go back to the starting line to be like, wait, what are we talking about again? And I am I'm traveling and I have novels with me and I'm reading them and I can sit down and read 50 pages at a time and feel like, okay, I'm doing the thing. And every time we finish reading like 20 pages, I'm like, my brain is hurting,
Yeah.
That's it. Complete thought. That's the complete thought.
Listening to this aloud, it reminded me a little bit of, do you guys know the play The Universal Language?
No.
Oh, it's a one act by David Ives. It's a really, I happen to like David Ives more than I should. But often he has these kind of absurdist premises. And this premise is about a person who has created a language school where he's trying to teach people a language called Unamunda, which is the universal language. And as the play goes on, it starts in English, but as he's kind of doing this immersion style education, by the end of the play, the whole play is in Unamunda. And hearing some of the way Joyce is playing with language here really sounds like Una Munda to me. Like, there's a line in the play where the student gets something right and the teacher goes perzacto, which is like a perfect plus exactly, and like what it means, but it's also not really a real word in any language. Anyway, it's a funny play. You should read it, but it's one that you kind of do have to read aloud, and when you hear the things spoken, you kind of get a sense of what is happening. But on the page, it looks like garbage.
Yeah, it's similar to Tom Stoppard's Dog's Hamlet, which uses English words but in different contexts.
Mhm.
And so you have the characters coming onto stage to build the set for this production of I think are they doing Macbeth? I think it's Cahoots Macbeth. So that usually paired up together, and so they're using real words, but they the meaning comes across in the context that they're performed in, and so.
Mhm.
I think we've said many times, if we had time to rehearse this, or if we had the inclination to rehearse this, the meaning would really become much deeper and much more clear if you're doing it like perzacto,
Mm.
knowing that word and knowing what it's supposed to mean. The performance, the intention of the performance means that the audience is going to follow along with you, as opposed to switching off and saying, I don't understand what this means, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
generally, I mean, listening to these things, it's kind of inevitable that our brains, when it stops looking for meaning, it starts looking for something to grab onto, and usually it's the familiarity of humor, of saying that sounds funny, or that I think I like that word, or I like that phrase, or because we're no longer saying we're going to be able to understand this if we listen carefully enough, which is the same with Shakespeare, is that someone can speak Shakespeare to a 9-year-old, and a good actor will convey the meaning easily, even though that child probably doesn't know half of those words, but it's the way that it's conveyed. So
Yeah, I think we brought this up before in another episode. Time is fake, and my memory is fading. But Sigur Rós, right? Like their whole thing is they sing in a made-up language, and the first thing you have to do is like, what is the aspect of this music that I'm going to cling on to, right? And it's either the instrumentation or our knowledge of song structure, that there's going to be, verse, chorus, bridge, build, and so you're waiting. So that's the thing that you actually start to enjoy, and you just let the sounds wash over you. Yeah, and so when we do get those sections, we're like, we understand the rhythm,
yeah,
right? I can hold on. Yeah,
Do you guys know if there's a stage adaptation of Finnegans Wake? Because
there is.
I'm sitting here thinking, like, I actually would be really curious to see something where some actor and director had like sat down with this text and thought about what is this trying to convey and how does this work. And interestingly, before like right now, if you were like, "Hey, a theater in your area is doing an adaptation of Finnegans Wake," I would have been like, "No," but actually, I would be really curious to see that.
Craig Walker wrote it.
Mhm.
It includes music, and the scenes 1 through 3 are available at the Playwright Center, and I've just downloaded it. And they
Craig.
call it an accessible, fast-moving, rollicking, hilarious adaptation of the notoriously unreadable novel by James Joyce.
Huh,
And Craig Walker was
fun.
my professor at college.
No
So
kidding.
yeah, I've known him for a long time. So and he's a very smart professor from Queen's University in Kingston.
It looks like
Um,
he also has something called The Ballad of Finnegans Wake on SoundCloud. Hmm.
So yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, in terms of that, I mean, just like talking about an adaptation of it, or talking about an abridgment. I mean, to come back to our book that we wrote, Aili. I mean, there have been abridgments of this thing where you can buy a copy of the text, but abridged. And we were trying to figure out, what's your perspective? We were trying to figure out earlier, like whether or not this would be possible to abridge, because like how would you go about cutting this one down?
Yeah, it's interesting because when we think about cutting plays, we're always right. Our questions are like, what's the story? Who's my audience? How much time do I have? Right.
Hmm.
And I think getting to what's the story seems like, a decade of work. But if you actually start with who's my audience, that's an interesting question because I could imagine a cut of what we just read that was designed for reading to 3-year-olds. Um, there are these
Yeah.
moments where I'm like, everything's rhyming, the rhythm's great. My preschool friends would love this. And I also could very readily see an adaptation that was designed for reading to kids who are in that like late elementary, middle school age where all of the stuff that seems like vaguely like it might be a dirty joke is 50% funnier. So I actually think maybe an audience-based cut would be
Right.
doable, more than a story-based cut.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, because generally the question of what's my story, what's my audience, and how much time do I have, the general answer for this one is don't know, no one, infinity.
I think that's a tagline for your podcast.
That's
Don't know.
right.
No one. What's this
Yeah.
for? Don't know. Who's it for? No one. How long is it going to take us? Infinity.
It could, yeah. I mean, and literally could. I think that's kind of part of the point. Just when you think you got a handle on something, you go, well, there's other. Have you thought about what this means in Esperanto? And you go, no. Well, Joyce has.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting thing. I mean, like you said, you know, the lists of names in alphabetical order, lots of really interesting allusions and references that a college audience would get different things out of than a group of 3-year-olds who'd laugh at the funny words. And it also comes down to how it's performed as well, because if this is performed in the sense of a quiz where they're looking for an answer, or they're like you would in a trivia night, or if it's more of a high school exam, very different kinds of approaches.
I want to say, and the listeners didn't get to experience this, but Aili made a face after she gave one of her answers. She's like, I guess. And I've never felt more seen. Because, I mean, you know, truthfully, I respect both you and Toby for your immense intelligence. And whenever y'all don't know something, I sit there, I'm like, I'm fine. I'm all the way fine. Thank you so much.
I feel like I don't think I understood the question.
Right?
Well, I think it is a humbling thing, and
Yeah.
this really does sort of remind you, no matter how many degrees we've got, we still don't know anything, and I think that's part of what he's trying to do. He's trying to say that he's just sort of scratching through the surface and then keeps digging, and just a single word can have 100 different meanings. And while we kind of acknowledge that, if you're writing a play and you acknowledge, oh, this word has multiple meanings, mostly we just ignore it and say, this is the one meaning I mean, or maybe there's two meanings that I mean. But if you say each word has 17 meanings and the audience has to get all of those, that's almost impossible, because you've also got to bring the audience along with you. We've taken up so much of your time, Aili, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. And also, our listeners have to be wondering
like, wrap
how long. So that is all the time we have this week for Wait. For the rest of this week's reading, join us next week for more burning questions. I've been Toby Malone, joined by TJ Young, and we really want to give a heartfelt thanks to Aili Huber for joining us. So thank you, Aili. You are the best.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. We're going to link to all of Aili's work, including her amazing Silk Moth Stage project. Do you want to give us the elevator pitch of what Silk Moth Stage is doing?
Yeah, so I had this whole thing about how we should do theater in a way that's not harmful to artists, and a bunch of people told me that was impractical and would be expensive. And so out of spite, I started a theater company. We produce new classics live on my porch in rural Rockingham County, Virginia. And so far, it's going very, very well. So
It's amazing. Yeah, really. Give her. We'll make sure we link to all the socials on our show page. And my favorite thing, this was all happening right around the time we were writing the book, where one of my favorite lines ever was Aili said, "My house has decided it wants to be a stage." You just had the house told you, as opposed to you deciding to take it. And that was so wonderful. And so the fact that you can go and watch amazing, innovative new theatre on your front porch is great. And then the kind of work that you're doing is so important. So that's amazing. And so we'll link to that and to all of your other work, and also to Cutting Face for Performance. Please buy a copy, because Lord knows the royalties haven't been putting us in mink furs or. That's okay. We write books for the love of it, not for the profits.
Nah, I write them for the profits.
Yeah.
Wrong reason to write a book, man.
you know,
at least you're doomed to disappointment, I should say.
Yeah.
Unless you've done an adaptation of the Three Musketeers and you just sell them like hotcakes. So yes. So also yes, pick up The Inseparables. Okay, thank you, Aili. Thank you, TJ. Thank you all for listening, and we will be back next week to finish up the quiz. So we'll see you then, long haul truckers.
All truckers.
Who
right.
assume the only people who are listening. This has been Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. If you've made it this far, thank you for your dedication. Join us next week for another segment of Finnegans Wake and a chat about what we've found. Wake is a Moon Street Media podcast, engineered by TJ Young and Toby Malone. Our theme song is The Ballad of Perso Riley, arranged and performed by Meg Logue after James Joyce. Wake is recorded in Canada, where Finnegans Wake is in the public domain. For community and bonus content, join us at our free Patreon at patreon.com/wakepod. If you have questions about Finnegans Wake, don't ask us. We're just as confused as you are. See you next week.